Welcome, and don't forget to join the journey towards a better tomorrow. Your engagement through a like, a share, and a subscribe can help to continue our mission to journalistically go where no news vlog has gone before. Make it so. Egypt meets with Hamas and the PIJ. We have an article from csod.com. Palestinian Islamic Jihad delegation heads to Egypt amid tensions. On January 6, 26 Israeli forces raided the Jenin refugee camp in the occupied northern West Bank, killed 9 Palestinians and wounded 16 others. Gaza, a delegation of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, will head to Egypt on Thursday. This is before the meeting. We'll get to the fallout of the meeting and the meeting itself as we go through the story. On Thursday for dialogue on diffusing the escalating tensions between Israel and Palestine, an official said. Dawood Shahab, a PIJ leader from Gaza, told reporters that the group's Secretary General, Ziad al-Nakhala, at the invitation of Egypt, will lead the delegation to discuss the escalating violence in the West Bank and Jerusalem with Egyptian security intelligence officials. The meeting comes after a series of deadly incidents in the region. On January 26, Israeli forces raided the Jenin refugee camp in the occupied northern West Bank, killed 9 Palestinians and wounded 16 others. A day later, a gunman opened fire on people near a synagogue at a Jewish settlement in East Jerusalem, killing at least 7 people. And Egypt has been mediating between Israel and the Palestinians and brokered several ceasefire arguments to end hostilities in the region. So there's a general take on it. I wanted to emphasize this idea that there's a governance of the Gaza Strip, and that governance is the democratically elected Hamas. Very important to note. And here's another article. This is from jwire.com.au. Hamas message to Islamic Strip, or to Islamic Jihad, interested in calm of Gaza Strip. An official, and this is from February 7th, an official in the Gaza Strip told TPS Monday it is widely believed that Hamas will not respond by shooting at Israel from within the Gaza Strip following the killing of the 7 terrorists in the Akbat Jabbar refugee camp near Jericho Monday morning. I'm not sure that this article will get through the entire thing just based on the language, the bias of the language, but Yahya Sinwar, the Palestinian leader of Hamas, is in the Gaza Strip here. A senior PA official says in a conversation with TPS that the Palestinian authorities demanded from the U.S. Secretary of State the cessation of unilateral measures on the part of Israel, including the construction in the so-called settlements, the training of the outpost, the expropriation of Tarafat lands, and the status quo at the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Here's another. This is from The Cradle. It's a West Asian news source. Hamas rejects U.S. security plan during Egypt summit report. So this is post. Previous reports called Washington's security plan problematic as it did not require any concessions from Tel Aviv and called for the formation of a special force to counter the resistance. A delegation from Hamas rejected a U.S. draft security plan during a meeting with Egyptian intelligence officials in Cairo that called for the Palestinian resistance group to stop its work in the West Bank and inside the cities occupied in 1948, according to sources that spoke with Lebanese daily Al-Akhbar. The arrival of the Hamas delegation on 8 February, led by Politburo Chief Ismail Haniyeh, came just days after a similar visit by a Palestinian Islamic Jihad.
We have the evidence, no one can dispute.
Let's try and unpack that for a second. Let's try and de-emotionalize this for a second. Let's try and intellectualize this for a second. Let's try and rationalize this for a second.
Let us. So I do know that Ismail Haniyeh is a former leader of Hamas, and He headed over with the delegation. Yahya Sinwar, who was mentioned in the last article, is the current leader. Per the report, Egyptian officials presented Hamas with the U.S. security plan and transmitted Washington's desire to see a de-escalation of tensions in the occupied territory. In response to this, the resistance officials highlighted that Washington's plan only wants to guarantee security for Israel and doesn't take into account Palestinians' rights or the severe abuses they suffer under the occupation. And even with this, I'm not exactly sure the entire orientation of this person's political perspective, or this source's political perspective. But to use the term Palestinian and juxtapose that with Israel as opposed to Israeli doesn't recognize the land Palestine. The officials also stressed again, Palestine is to Palestinians as Israel is to Israelis. The officials also stressed that the escalation of violence is led by the Israeli government and its apartheid policies, which include near daily raids of West Bank neighborhoods, attacks on Muslims and Christian holy sites, the illegal expansion of so-called settlements, and the continued murder of civilians. In light of the Israeli crimes, it's impossible to talk about calming the situation in the occupied territories, the Hamas delegation reportedly told the Egyptian officials. Over 35 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli forces since the beginning of the year, according to a Palestinian human rights report. At least 10 Israelis have been killed in separate shootings, attacks in occupied Jerusalem. The Hamas delegation also stressed that the resistance is determined to respond to the provocations of Israel's far-right government, particularly those of National Security Minister Bezalel Smotrich and National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir. Hamas will not remain silent on the plans to Judaize the city of Jerusalem, expel Jerusalemites, and demolish their homes. What Hamas proved during the Battle of the Sword of Jerusalem will not be undone, the officials went on to say. That's Bezalel Smotrich, and we do know Itamar Ben-Gvir. We'll be unpacking them in future episodes. Maybe next week we'll do some really extensive journalism on them, related to them. So that's from the Cradle. We also have Al-Mayadeen here. Sources to Al-Mayadeen: PIJ, Egypt, failed to show new breakthrough. Palestinian sources told Al-Mayadeen that the talks mainly revolved around the movement's activity in Jenin and Qom in the West Bank, in the occupied West Bank. This is Secretary General of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, Ziad al-Naqallah. Palestinian sources confirmed to Al-Mayadeen on Sunday that the Cairo talks between the Palestinian Islamic Jihad and the Egyptian General Intelligence Directorate failed to show any new breakthrough. According to the sources, discussions revolved around the movement's activity in Jenin and Qom in the occupied West Bank and are to continue today. It also made clear that the Israeli occupation wants the resistance to preserve calm and for PIJ not to take action in occupied Al-Quds and West Bank, even if the IOF's operation there continued. This comes after the Secretary General of the PIJ, Ziad al-Naqallah, and the accompanying delegation met with the head of the Egyptian General Intelligence Service, Minister Abbas Kamel, yesterday in the Egyptian capital. PIJ indicated in a statement yesterday that the two sides discussed bilateral relations and Egyptian efforts to alleviate the suffering of the Palestinian people and ways to reunite the Palestinian ranks. Al-Mayadeen's sources revealed last week an upcoming visit by al-Naqallah to Cairo upon an Egyptian invitation. The delegation includes 5 members of the political bureau in Gaza and others from abroad, accompanied by the Secretary General, the sources stated. Based on the source's information, the delegation headed to Cairo to attend meetings with Egyptian officials to discuss escalations, especially those under the new Israeli government. And so apparently the new Israeli government that's just been voted in is led again by Netanyahu and is a bit more overtly right-wing and violent than past governments. So it has shown itself the past maybe month or so. Palestinian delegation from Gaza in Egypt to discuss restoring calm with Israel. And this is another from beforehand, but this is from the Egyptian perspective. This is ahram.org. Egypt will receive on Thursday a Palestinian delegation from the Gaza Strip led by prominent members of the Islamic Jihad movement. Official sources told Ahram Online. There's Ziad al-Naqala once again. Other leaders from the Hamas movement will also join the delegation to attend an expanded meeting in Egypt. The sources say where the Egyptian officials will discuss the process to achieve calm between the Palestinian factions and Israel in light of the bloody escalation between the two sides, the sources explain. According to AFP, Islamic Jihad said earlier in the day that it would send a delegation led by the militant group's leader Ziad al-Naqala to Cairo on Thursday at Egypt's invitation. The delegation would meet with the head of Egypt's intelligence service to discuss how to restore calm, especially after the last escalation, including the aggressions against prisoners, said Daoud Shab, a senior Islamic Jihad member in Gaza. The visit comes amid heightened Israeli-Palestinian tensions since the new far-right government and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu came to power in late December. On Thursday, Israeli warplanes struck Gaza, drawing retaliatory rocket fire from Palestinian militants as violence flared, despite U.S. calls for urgent steps to restore calm, according to AFP. Israel said the pre-dawn strikes were in response to an earlier rocket launch, and it targeted military training camps. Used by Gaza's rulers, Hamas. The airstrikes targeted the central area of the Strip, reported the AFP, hours after its interception of the missile fired from Gaza. Early on, Friday, Israeli jets launched strikes against Gaza, escalating tensions and fears a few months after Israel launched one of its deadliest raids in years in the occupied West Bank, including a deadly raid on Jenin refugee camp last Thursday, killing 10 Palestinians. An 11th Palestinian was killed elsewhere in the West Bank on the same day. In response, a Palestinian gunman opened fire outside an East Jerusalem synagogue on Friday night, killing at least 7 and wounding several people. This year, Israel's killed 35 Palestinians. That's before the last number. Last year was the deadliest year in the West Bank since the United Nations started tracking fatalities in 2005. Nearly 150 Palestinians were killed in the West Bank and East Jerusalem last year, making 2022 the deadliest year in those territories since 2004, according to a leading Israeli rights group. Thursday's visits comes 2 days after Egypt's chief of the General Intelligence Service, Abbas Kamel, and his Jordanian counterpart, Ahmed Hosni, conveyed a message of support. From their presidents, the message was from their presidents, for the Palestinian issue in meeting with President Mahmoud Abbas in Ramallah. On Saturday, Egypt warned of the several dangers of the ongoing escalation between the Palestinian and Israeli sources, calling for the So we have that. Watch this space. We'll continue to consider how it is that Palestine, Egypt, and Palestine, as represented by the PIJ and Hamas, the democratically elected governments, we'll see how they continue to build relationships towards peace.